Timmo, how you doing, mate?
Hey, God bless you, Chris. Lovely to see you.
Yes, God bless you too, mate. So we did a podcast a little while back, didn't we? It was massively popular, and people were asking me. They wanted to know more about you, Timmo, and maybe a bit less of the sort of political stuff. And how did you? A lot of people were curious about your British Army story. We're both veterans, so we got a bit of a connection there. And then, of course, you've got more. You've probably got more experience in the combat zones than a lot of people put together. And I'm not here to big up. I think anyone that knows my show knows I'm not here to big up war or combat. I think it's all controlled. What was it, Smedley Butler? What was that book he wrote, Timmo?
Never heard of them. Never heard of him.
I think it was War is a Racket. It was America's highest decorated colonel or general or something. And he said, all I did in my whole career, he said, I was a hitman for the global mafia. So, anyway, um, I think let's just start at the beginning, Tim. There's a photo you served in the Royal Green Jackets. What made you want to join up?
Bosnia. When I was a lad, just before I joined the army, the Bosnian War was stopped by the British soldiers. Well, by the UN mandated peace accords, but before that, the Cheshire Regiment were in there, giving it, firing the riding cannons on the Warrior armored personnel carrier. I wanted. I was raised on Sir Lancelot,
Got
and I
ya.
wanted to be a British soldier. And just as in World War II, they stopped the
Timo,
genocide.
stand still. You're looking a bit mental, dude.
Just as in World War II, I had family involved there. I wanted to, in my generation, do my bit.
And why did you join the Royal Green Jackets?
All right, then. I started out in the King's Royal Hussars, the tank regiment. But on Winchester, the Winchester Army Training Regiment camp, Sir John Moore Barracks, is where the Light Division were doing their training, the infantry. It's all been merged into the Rifles Regiment now, of course. And once I got a glimpse of them, and I heard them sounding off, as it were, on the square, I set my heart on joining them. And I managed to transfer over. The officers were very good, and I managed to transfer over. They put me back a few weeks in training. I was in week 7 of the Armored Corps training, phase 1. And they put me back to about week 5 of the Light Division platoon. And from then on, my career as a Royal Green Jacket began.
Is it um, is it tough, that training?
It was unbelievably tough.
What kind of stuff did they have you doing?
Bee stingers. But I was used to it because funnily enough, I'd been on some cadet camps as a youth. And they sent us off with the RAF regiment. And these chaps, they got hold of us and they said, this is called bee sting. I'd never heard of it before. Now you see people having a go doing military fitness in the parks, Chris, But
Yeah, yeah. My mate's got a company that does that. He's been very successful at it.
well, we were all over the lovely British countryside getting beasted.
Mm. And we were
And
chatting earlier, weren't we? Because I think there's a direct. Well, I mean, it's not what I think; it's what I know. There's a direct correlation between childhood trauma and people that join the military. And we could go into the psychosocial implications of that, but maybe that's a chat for another day. But you were saying your dad worked for British Aerospace, and you'd have described your childhood as idyllic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was thrown into the infantry with a lot of inner city lads, and they'd had terrible upbringings, as you described. And they used to call me officer type bloke. And I think it was refreshing for them to serve with somebody like me, who genuinely did come from a privileged background, even of the military industrial complex. And I was happy to serve with all of those fellows. My best friend, his father had been a big, they called him the godfather of Sutton, near Mansfield. The man had run with the IRA, run gold through Amsterdam with the IRA. Heroin addicts, the lot of them. Prisoners. My best friend, he was a hard person. He choked me out many a time. You know, he'd been in prison directly before the army, but they saw a rough diamond. Back then there were cases of people who'd been noticed in the prison system, I guess. They called them daddies and such, and they were allowed into the army. But there were some tremendous chaps, absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. You ever seen the film Scum?
Once Upon a Time. I've seen Once Upon a Time.
Yeah, it's about Borstal, isn't it?
Indeed.
And it's kind of sorry. The reason I mention it is I think in Scum it kind of flags up that side of life that's a bit like the military, where you meet some people that are quite hard. You meet in some extremes. Would you agree? You can meet some people that are just downright nasty. Was probably damaged is a better word, but it comes across as like just people you don't want to be around. Then you come across the daddy characters that they like. Some of them think they're it, but
some of them are genuinely.
Some of them are it, yeah.
They come from the criminal class, and the system has managed to save them by conscripting them into the army, and that's such chaps in prison. They would only have defended the weak, as it were.
Yeah. So, what did your parents think about you joining the army?
They accepted it because it had been my calling, as it were. We all knew it was my calling, and
yeah. And could you just outline the tours? Did you serve in Northern Ireland?
No, when I got to battalion, the battalion had just come from 2 years in Paderborn. Sorry, in Hollywood Barracks.
Yeah, I've been there.
And they'd come to Germany, and I got there a couple of months after they'd come to Germany, and so no. Then we went to Bosnia, to Kosovo, but I've never been to Ireland in my life. Never been. And I worked with so many tremendous Irish scaffolders, crane drivers, and banksmen. They're a tremendous race, if one's allowed to to talk about races. They're all tremendous races. Every race in the world is a tremendous race.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say English, Irish, Scots, Welsh, all lovely people, you know. But you know, you always get
Nigerians,
the odd one.
Timbuktuans, Tibetans, Pakistanis, but
So,
they're all wonderful races.
so how old were you in Kosovo then?
In Kosovo, right? I went to Bosnia when I was 19. I went to Kosovo when I was 20, and I had my 21st birthday in Kosovo. Is that right? Is that right?
Doesn't it, mate? It doesn't have to be exact, and you're always going to get some keyboard warrior in the thing that's going to pick you up
Right,
because
so
you.
I was born January 97, January 1978. Went to Kosovo 1999, August. So
And just
I was already 21, and I was 22 when I came back from Kosovo. I was 22 when I came back from Kosovo. That's right.
and not to put too fine a point on it, but these are parts of the world where there's been quite some atrocities. What did you see? What did you actually witness? What stuff sticks in your mind?
Well, in my British Army tours, I only saw the direct aftermath of the genocide. We saw dried up brains and spinal tissue on a mattress with boot prints that had been someone had their brains blown out. We were just dealing with hordes of returning refugees. It wasn't until I went to Syria that I saw firsthand corpses. What you're talking about? It wasn't until I was in Syria I saw exactly green people. I saw, yeah.
Yes.
So people that turned green. The skin was like the texture of peach, like a green peach.
Was that from a specific type of weapon, or
just good time. Just in this instance, there was some piles of ISIS corpses.
Friends at home, we should just say, obviously, we're talking about some serious stuff here. If this isn't for you, just tune off now. Also, you know, if you're feeling sensitive, tune off now. If anyone out there is feeling on a bit of a dodgy wicket, make sure you reach out and get some help. Start with your GP. Sorry, Timmo, back to you. I just had to say that.
Well, there's a saying, right? It's not a nice saying. Like in the underworld, someone will say in a threatening way, "I'll turn your forehead green." And it means when a body's been laying for some time, it starts decomposing and human skin becomes green in color. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've seen dead bodies when they're sort of entering that phase, I suppose, before they've been buried. How long after, well, what did you do, Timmo, when you left the army? What did you find it easy to integrate into other things?
I followed my dreams. I went off to join the French Foreign Legion directly after the army. Didn't work out. And then I went. The thing is, I continued traveling like I'd done in the army. It was a wonderful experience, like stepping off the plane in Croatia, in Split, for example, in 1998. And after I left the army, I said to myself, I'm not going to stay one place now and settle down like that. I'm going to keep going on operational tours, as it were, you know, but as a civilian. And I ended up in Israel. I ended up in 2002. in a big anti-terrorist operation, myself and a Japanese tourist, we went into Bethlehem, and we got fired on by Israeli paratroopers, because we didn't know there was a curfew, and I was saying to myself, I'm doing tours, and
Come on, tell us, how'd you join the French Foreign Legion then? Where's the recruiting office?
you can turn up in to any police station in France. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you go online, and there's certain cities, they have dedicated recruiting centers where you can turn up and they will accept you. But for example, I went there twice to the Foreign Legion. I went back after the first time, after a couple of years. And I turned up to there's a big citadel in Lille. And it's a huge old fortress, one of the great European fortresses of the Renaissance era, as it were. And they have the Legion NCO on the gate in a little post. It's fascinating, wonderful. And they turned me away with a little list saying, you have to go and get these some toothpaste and a toothbrush and some stuff it was like. So I went and I took it all, and I came back. And yes, but in 2000 I went to Fort de Nogent. It's in Versailles in Paris. So anyone who wants to go there, get yourself to Paris on the Eurostar and present yourself at Fort de Nogent. But check first, because there's some basic supplies you need to take with you.
Yeah, it's a bit like going to Euro Disney, but a bit crapper.
Never been to Euro Disney.
Hey, never say never. You're a man that likes to get around, Timmo. I think it could be on your agenda.
Only if there's somebody very special in my life who demands to go there. That's the only reason I would go there.
So, French Foreign Legion, what's it like? We discussed this last time. Some people really get on with it. There's been friend of mine in the Marines, his brother was Foreign Legion, and he was really high up, or he certainly had got his feet under the table, and clearly loved it, etc., etc. I think one time he was home on leave and his uniform got stolen off the washing line, and he was walking past a second-hand shop, and it was in the window of the second-hand shop. But anyway, but then I think we discussed this last time.
Used to see that in London, Chris, when I worked at Heathrow Airport. Used to see the PPE of the companies I was working for, and work on the Sunday market in Hounslow. Used to see it there. Yeah.
But a lot of people don't get on with it, do they? And they leave, and they go AWOL. It just seems to be a bit of a phenomenon.
Indeed, because it's to do with if somebody has a weak mind in a certain way, I guess. People get homesick, don't they? And also, if you're talking about AWOL after a combat incident, for example, it's a different kettle of fish. I mean, some people go AWOL from the Legion just because they want to go to Ibiza and do drugs with their youth, for example, and they go. They tell everyone, I can't go back to France because I might get arrested. But then that's one sort of person. But if someone's been in a contact and they go AWOL in theatre, for example, it's different. If somebody loses 10,000 rounds of ammunition in Ukraine and goes missing in theatre, for example, there's different. There are different incidences. Every case is different. Every soldier is different.
What's the food like in the Foreign Legion?
It was wonderful. They pride themselves on presenting a great example of French cuisine. I remember wonderful handmade French sausages, different to a British Cumberland sausage. And it wasn't like in Britain. In some British Army bases now, they subcontract the catering to Sodexo or some civilian caterer, but they actually had Legionnaire cooks. In the British Army in Germany, we still had British Army Royal Logistics Corps cooks, chefs, and the French Foreign Legion soldiers, chefs. I mean, it was their life. The cooking was an expression as themselves, second to none. We had to wash the dishes routinely in the cookhouse there, but it was a pleasure to eat a meal before washing the dishes. Really good.
And what outposts do they still have in North Africa? Obviously, after the decolonisation of Africa, you'd think they wouldn't have any, but I'm guessing they still have a presence in certain countries, Algeria perhaps?
No, they were thrown out of Algeria by the Mujahideen. Now, I know. But of course, Russia is now trying to gain influence in France, and many countries are turning to the Wagner Group, for example, for military training and military support. And they're ditching France because Russia has a clean slate in Africa, of course. France was a colonial power, and all colonial powers, sadly, committed
atrocities.
Yeah.
All right, Wagner Group. Oh, what's his name? Prigozhin.
Yevgeny Prigozhin.
Yeah. He didn't last long, did he? After he upset Mr. Putin.
Would you expect to?
So, friends at home, Prigozhin was the very drunken leader of Azov of Wagner. So this group, a mercenary group, basically, or they do Russia's sort of dirty work, and they're off the books. And Prigozhin, in one of his more drunken moments, decided to what was it he was going to overthrow?
The regime. Well, he was sad. Made him very sad that his people were dying because of ammunition shortages. That he said they was caused by the General Staff of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation.
That was right. And he started a bit of what you call it, a mutiny, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he started a march. He called it March of something or other, and they were on their way to Moscow, but they came to terms, and Mr. Prigozhin went to Belarus, and then he was on a flight somewhere, and now he's with Jeffrey. He's with Mr. Epstein now in the same island.
Yes, he's gone to where the Epsteins go. Right, so Peshmerga, sorry.
Yo.
What was the first moment you decided you were going to go to Syria and fight against, I'm going to say, quote unquote, ISIS? What do you remember when you made that decision, or what made you make that decision?
Well, I was actually on my way there before the whole ISIS thing, because my battalion, 2 RGJ, after the amalgamation, it became 4 rifles, and in 2007 they were the last battalion in place in Basra Palace. They fought very hard in Basra, and I was in Jordan at the time, and I actually got a taxi to the Iraqi border, but the driver kept ripping me off. He's like, he'd stop at some junction. He'd say, "Now give me more 50 dinar." In the end, I said, "Just turn back to Jordan, to Amman. Sorry, turn back to Amman." I went back to Amman. But I wanted to go and turn up in Basra. I felt terrible, and for many years I wanted to visit the Kurds in northern Iraq. And when the genocide that ISIS committed began, I was dead set on going. I jolly well booked myself a flight, and I turned up at Erbil International Airport in Kurdistan Regional Governorate of northern Iraq. And I first met up with the Peshmerga. And they put me in prison in the first instance. And I flew back. And then I returned. I flew to Istanbul, and I got the bus. I got the bus from Istanbul to Erbil. I got through the border, and this time I went to the YPG, to the communist militia, and they got me into Syria. I went to Suleimania. We went to a safe house. We went to the mountains. We were with guerrillas. They're very political. As I say, they're neo-communists, as it were. And they got us into Syria, and they've been maligned and forgotten for a long time in their war against the Turkish regime, which I won't really go into that. But now they were fighting against ISIS. They gained a war that they could be proud of in the eyes of the world, because people turned a blind eye in favor of Turkey against them. I was with the guerrillas, and here's a patch that was given to me by my platoon commander, as it were. His name was Heval Soran. He was an Iraqi Kurd, and that's the star of the YPG, the 5-pointed star of the YPG.
Yeah, we can see it.
And we went into battle against ISIS. We rolled into villages. We had RPG pass straight past the windscreen of the Humvee we were in by meters. We were blazing our guns from behind houses. People were getting bullets through them.
How many foreign fighters were there with you then?
When I actually turned up in the mountains, I was one of the last foreign fighters who turned up. Like, there was safe house. There's a safe house in Suleimania where there was like 4 of us. And then one American Marine, he deserted in the night and stuff. And eventually we went to the mountains, and there was a big group of foreigners, like about 30 foreigners, who'd been waiting there for more than a month or 2. And I was one of the last foreigners to get to the group. And we almost immediately on the first night went across the river to Syria. And there was a big group of us. But of course you have natural wastage. People go AWOL, people say it's not for me.
Right, I want to ask you one of them questions now that that sort of fascinate me. I know that you get a mishmash. I think that's the right expression, of people rocking up there, don't you? What would you say, Timmo, is the thing that? What's the thread that you can draw through all these people? For example, are they just a bit mental? Are they emotionally disturbed? Are they like utterly passionate? Are they, driven by the influenced by the media? Is it that they love scrapping? They just love to fight and fire off rounds, or what is it?
Well, as you've rightly said, that they come from all angles at it. But maybe on an esoteric sense, the truth is they all have an encounter with death. I mean, all of us are going to die, as we all know. The Bible even says people who don't go to heaven, it will be like they die twice.
I thought we was on the everlasting life kick.
Well, you've got life, you've got energy. I mean, you could say that if the soul is in hell, of course it's still alive. That's a form of everlasting life. But is it very nice? Does the life form enjoy it? That's another question.
Sorry, I didn't mean to change the subject. Now, I want to get back to your fellow fighters. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember there was a lad I went to school with. He become a mercenary down in Africa for one of these, outfits, that we've heard about over the years that get into the media. And he had his rifle, like he used to cut notches in the stock to represent all the people that he'd, I don't want to say the words, but you know, people know what I'm talking about. And then one day he got double crossed. He didn't get paid by his platoon leader or, whoever the money guy was. So he took him out. And this guy he was just a bit mental. I don't know what you say. They come from a tough family.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Well, but that's not just in the military. For example, I've seen firsthand in the scaffolding industry, some scaffolder get a vendetta against another scaffolder and try to set him up to be killed by dropping a 13-foot scaffolding board on his head from the roof. I mean, that's just, you got mad scaffolders, mate. That's, brother, you got
The thing is, though, you got a choice where
scumbags, haven't you? You'll always have a scumbag, innit? Like Judas. Jesus had his crew, he had his 12 disciples, but there was one scumbag who sold the boss. It will always happen, even on a corporate level. You'd have one director or boardroom, and there'll be one of the directors who'll have his eye on the top job, and he'll frag the managing director and throw him under the bus, as the awful expression goes. That's simply humanity.
did you ever witness anyone getting fragged? It's kind of a lawless environment, is it not, on the front line?
Only at work as a civilian, Chris. On the battlefield, yeah, there was brotherhood. No, no, never in my time, G.
I
Never
had
in my.
I had
There, there,
someone.
there was rumor of it. This is the thing, right? Yeah. Like, in our taboo, in our platoon, the tabor was sent towards the Turkish border, and they were Sorani Iraqi Kurds with like pirates, right? Totally different from the rest of the Kurds. And suddenly they saw Turkish army vehicles, and they turned, they askari Turk soldier. They turned around. They didn't do the resupply mission. They thought they'd been set up. Like our platoon thought that the command had set them up to be taken out by the Turkish troops. Whether that's true or not, but
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
we had a chap on a podcast that was on Black Ops in Vietnam, and he got in so above his head that he knew they weren't going to let him out, and he waited until sort of 5 or 6 of his team were in a tent together, and then he just rolled a grenade underneath the flap of the tent. It just it's things like that you can easily imagine go on in the heat of combat, you know, where you know someone can upset you, but it can really be sort of, it's life and death is what I'm trying to say. You know, it's life and death.
There was one time it happened to me, but it was all accidental, sort of. Right. Tabora Soran. We were like 50 kilometers south, north of Al Raqqa, right? 2015. And we were in the village, in the platoon house. So with the Kurds, we would just sit in the platoon house. With the British Army, they would put sentries out through, you know, at the outskirts of the village, correct? If there's any, if the British Army are in a village, they're not going to just sit in some platoon house in the middle and not be able to view the outskirts of the village and the road into the village. So there was all sorts of spookiness about the village. Lights were seen at night. There were stand twos. There was firing incidents in the night. And it was my nature as a rifleman to go off on my own and to smoke and to sit in little mud huts, maybe to sleep, to do a bit of graffiti, to look at photographs. I would spend some days just looking at the photo albums in the abandoned houses. And throughout my military career, maybe I should be saddened, ashamed about it, but I took photos from the abandoned houses. And you shouldn't really do that, I guess, because civilian houses should be respected. But I was young, and I got myself a nice mosque, you see, in this village, and I would lay up in the mosque, and my own platoon started firing on the mosque, and I had to simply lie on the carpet, and I thought of returning fire. I thought, just as it was an instinct, but I knew they would roll up to the mosque in the armored Humvee and demolish me. I just had to lay on the carpet until they'd finished their cowboyish sporadic firing at the mosque. And such things did happen, yeah. Mm.
What's it like then, the professionalism? I mean, you were trained with the British Army, so probably, I think, fair to say, the best training, infantry training on the planet, or up, you know, certainly up there on a level. And yet you got to rock up in a war zone with someone who might have been a postman a week ago. Or they might even have not even have had a job. How does that work out? How are they supposed to develop the military skills to be a combatant?
Well, it's about humility, I guess. If that person realizes in a humble way that he doesn't know, he isn't the big all, and he'll have a proper relationship with the people who can teach him the required skills. And most of the people who turn up are very mature, and they're not going to be a dickhead, as it were, you know, and put an SAS beret on and tell everyone to fuck off and just march off across the no man's land to the ISIS village with his weapon. Like, if he wants to, fair dues. Like, but most of the guys who would rock up to make that journey and to get to the front line, or to get to Syria, the Kurds themselves, I don't want to be insulting, but like an animal has sixth sense, you know, like a cat has sixth sense. The Kurds won't let some total dickhead like that in, man. they got a sense of people. And all in all, most people, if they are some sort of total spastic like that, they'll be cowards at the end of the day, innit? They will probably fall out when they've got their little thrill. They'll probably be going home. But
What was that story, Timmo? Remind me. There was some, I think it was Syria, some lad went over there. I think he was featured in the media a bit, and then the next thing you know, his position had got overrun. Do you remember that story? Did you know that guy?
that's 2017, yeah?
Yeah, round. Oh, I couldn't put a date on it. Could you refresh our memory?
See his face. I can see his face. He looked a bit like Rodney from Only Fools and Horses.
He was blonde hair, yeah.
Poor lad, yes. But I could tell from the pictures of him, although he hadn't been a British soldier, it was his ambition, and he gained a military bearing from the look of him. And he was with the Kurdish Hebals. He was the Kurds. They take Kurdish civilians and make them into soldiers. So if one of the Westerners, he is not ex-military, the Kurds will put him through the academy. So that's the big filter, Chris. With the Kurdish YPG, people must go to the academy if they can't prove that they've served in the nation's military or served in another military. So in Syria, you don't get it so much. But I guess there will be wars in the future, God forbid, when all sorts of freaks will turn up like in some nightmare. Fred Carno's army is what my training corporal used to call it. There was an old film. He said, "You like Fred Carno's army, you lot, you fucking tin pot."
Yeah, that expression come to mind. Was it Oliver Hall?
Honestly, don't know. I'll have to watch that. Find out that film's origin and watch it.
Yeah. No, sorry, I'm talking about the chap that was killed. I think 24.
Yes, that's Phil. That's his name. That's his name. That's his name.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's so, Timmo, there's that thing then that no one thinks it's going to happen to them. No one thinks they're going to buy the farm.
Not true. Not true.
No.
The Royal Marine who I served with, Costa Skirfield, he indicated verbally that he knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, can I just say, just for people at home, no, the guy that I was talking about was not Oliver Hall, because he was killed clearing mines. This was another chap that was in the media, and I just know that his position got overrun, and it didn't end well for him. But Costa, yeah, we discussed Costa in our last podcast, didn't we? Former Royal Marine.
He was one who I was.
So he would have been a guy that rocked up there that pretty much was self-sufficient, because he knew, as far as his training needs were, his experiential needs were, he would have known what to do. What do you do with the youngsters then that are a bit clueless? Do some of them get sent home?
Well, there was one fellow who was AWOL from the British Army. He got sent home because the British Army aren't to be messed with, and the Kurds sent him packing. But he made good. He left the British Army. He came back. After that, Ukrainian Marines. Now he runs a training organization in Ukraine. But there were some who were directed into civilian service in Kurdistan, Chris. because try not to lose people, because there's a lot of civilian work to be done.
And
tree planting even, or working in a communal bakery even. Try to retain people. But most of the people, if there was one common thread running through them, it was hatred of the Jack the Ripper type sex crimes that ISIS had been committing, Chris. But that's another story, maybe.
yeah,
The Beatles, Jihadi John, South London, the Roadmen. It's a long story, mate. Somewhere in the anti-terrorism files.
Yeah. What about that jihad? Was he called Jihadi John?
Yes.
That what do you think? Obviously, we can't get into graphic detail, but those videos, some of the videos coming out from ISIS were honestly the quality. They were like 4K. They were like Hollywood productions. I won't say the content of them because the content was utterly vile beyond the as vile as you could get.
Yeah.
And I just had a hard time believing that some ragtag militia had put these videos together, but
it could be argued, Chris, that you look at any British city, who are the people running computer repair shops? Who are the people with such digital experience? You could say that, isn't it? You could say the people who were in ISIS were the people who demographically they work in such industries. Or you could say dark forces were at work and CIA top level disinformation experts were. Gosh, what's that film? They engineered some crisis in Albania to change the election in America. Do you remember that? It was before Kosovo. Yeah.
No, but it sounds like it's got Mossad written all over it. And when I say I shouldn't really say Mossad because I think all the intelligence agencies, I think they all work for the same dark cabal. Did you see this thing? They were saying that all ISIS drove brand new Toyota pickup trucks. And the thing was, no one was questioning where they were getting these brand new pickup trucks from.
It's true, and I've seen a lot of black Toyota pickup trucks in my own country. Hilux, Toyota Hilux.
Yeah.
Wonderful vehicle. And I believe that they were brought in through the Gulf states.
Yeah, exactly. They had to be They had to have got there somehow, and yeah, this is why I say, Timmo. I take all these narratives with a pinch of salt. I'm firmly of the belief I know who controls who's trying to control the world. So, moving on then, Ukraine. How many people do you think rocked up there thinking it was going to be like running around the desert playing soldiers? And, that's the previous experience of volunteers, was going to places like Syria or whatever. And then when they actually rocked up in let's just call it a proper war zone, or a modern theatre of war, and they saw the lethality of these weapon systems, I mean, I'm guessing a lot of people just packed up and went home, Timmo, didn't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But hopefully not without having contributed something.
Well,
hopefully without, if a person's got to that level, they're on a fire team. So they're either digging the tunnel and passing the ammunition up the stairs to the grenade launcher, and they've already saved a life by rotating into that position. And if after that terrible experience they decide to hop it and go home, at least they'll have contributed something, and they'll be remembered. Somebody will remember them to their dying day. Their comrades will dream about them till their dying day. Once you're in, you're in.
Yeah, the Foreign Legion, the depot was hit, wasn't it, by these massive bunker buster. Do you remember when that happened? It was about 8 to 10 huge targeted explosions.
Yeah, you're talking about the Ukrainian Foreign Legion at Yavor.
Yeah, and basically Moscow had hit the Foreign Legion, not the recruiting center, so to speak, but where the recruits were sort of sent to, I guess, get their initial training, pick up their equipment.
It happened, and my second in command later, he'd been there. I was in a group called the Norman Brigade, led by an ex-NCO of the French Foreign Legion Parachute Regiment, the 12e Rep. His name was Hrulf. He was French-Canadian. And his 2IC, his second in command, was an Englishman. And he'd been at this strike you're talking about. And he was one of the people who stayed in country. And he's still there.
Yeah, so who was the sniper? Do you remember was it
Wally.
Wally, yeah. Was he Canadian or something, wasn't he?
That's right. You see, Hrulf, the commander of the Norman Brigade.
Mate, how do you spell Hrulf? I'll get it up on the screen.
Hrulf.
Yeah, keep talking.
Hrulf had been Wally's commander as well. And Hrulf had what to say about everybody. He didn't beat around any bush. And he had a I don't give a fuck about your feelings attitude. But yeah, there's the Canadians are also second to none.
He got a very Jewish look to him. This Jean-Francois Rattel is his real name.
Oui, c'est vrai.
And sorry, going back to Wally, he was this shit hot sniper basically, wasn't he? And then we heard a lot about him, and then we didn't hear anything about him. What's his story?
Well, I believe that there's a whole online secure chat, yeah.
Yeah, listening.
They all organize it between themselves, you know. They're all in touch between themselves, and if someone shuts their mouth, they shut their mouth because some don't give a fuck individual has got in touch with them and said, keep this quiet.
So is he still alive is what I'm getting at, and what
I believe so. He's a hero, man. He fired on the enemy, man. He fired his sniper rifle at the enemy. What more do you want, G? We're counting the rounds on him. No, yeah, counting his rounds for him.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to look here. Was trying to get a picture of him. I don't know if they ever actually showed his picture in the media. How many foreign fighters are over there or were over there, and did that tail off when they realised how much people were getting deaded?
Of course, slightly, but there is still a decent stream of young men and young women turning up to join the armed forces of Ukraine. Because, of course, Chris, if a soldier lasts in the armed forces until the end of the war, they have a new life. They'll be a Ukrainian citizen, just like with the French Foreign Legion. Ukraine is a great and beautiful and massive country, and the scale of everything is bigger. Like, it makes London seem cluttered with little buildings. It's Ukraine will always have people who are willing to give up their life to become part of Ukraine, just like Taiwan would, or any country that calls and says to young people and not so young people all over the world, give up that life that you're living now and give up that boss who's pissing you off or this or that, and come to me and fight a decent fight and get a new life and maybe find a wife or a husband. And even after the war, to live as a veteran of that country's liberation, and not just as a nobody back in their own country. I remember walking in Mykolaiv with a Ukrainian sergeant, and I said to him, after the war, probably sad that nobody will give a fuck about you guys. They will just say, oh, you lost your leg in a car accident or something, for example. And he said, yeah, and the guy who lost his leg in a car accident will probably say he lost it in combat. But you'll always have people who want to go to fight for Ukraine, Chris, really. And of course, there's also a political slant to it as well. There are certain political creeds who are not.
We should point out it's not just they go and fight for Ukraine. A lot of people have gone to fight for Russia as well. It's just the Ukrainian ones have got a lot of. I'd say it suits the media narrative a lot more to focus on these. You know what the media want you to believe are heroic young people going into the danger zone on the side of righteousness. But of course, there's always two sides to a media narrative.
There's always two sides to the medal as well. That was the Wagner Brigade's catchline. Two sides to the medal, and on the other side of the medal is the skull and crossbones, bro. Some fucking occult symbolism.
Yeah. Now we're getting to the heart of the program. It's all one big satanic game, because that's what they play, and the gullible public just they don't understand it, Timmo, do they? They watch their news and they think it's all like about soldiers and heroes and tea and medals, and sort of they don't understand the people that tell you all this shit.
The truth is too awful for the public to imagine. The truth is too personal and awful for them. Someone once said, if the public knew the truth, there would be revolution by tomorrow morning.
Well, I just want to go back, mate, because I'm more friends at home. Like, I get I don't even want to call it the politics of it. It's not the politics. It's all just it's probably more accurate to say New World Order gameplay by these satanic maniacs. And I don't want to, that's not the conversation I wanted to have with Timmo. The conversation I want to have is, what's it actually like to rock up there and be in a trench, to get issued with a Kalashnikov or whatever the weapon might be, to be in one of these trenches that you've just dug with a spoon, and then get eyes on a drone coming straight towards you because some Russian spotty teenager sitting in a shake-on in Moscow has seen a heat signal, and now you're just about to die. This is the reality I'm sort of want to discuss. Were the drones terrifying, Timmo? Was that something you did not want to hear, that noise?
Absolutely. It sort of seems unfair. In the time of knights, the English knights said that bows and arrows were unfair and ungentlemanly. And one can imagine the horror they suddenly felt on the battlefield were. But yes, but one thing I'd like to say is that when one is on the battlefield, one is usually high naturally. I was always sort of seeing little visions, and adrenaline or endorphins or whatever natural chemicals come into the body. I was always able to find within myself some inner motivation. Believe it or not, I had a dream of Zelensky. I was asleep in my little spoon hole, as you call it. And I dreamt I was in a supermarket and Zelensky was there. And he bent over in front of me and he picked up a huge bottle of brut champagne and he kissed it. And I was thinking of, I want to get out of this place. But when he picked up the champagne, he said to me, I guess I'm not for you then. I was feeling, as you say, the level of the bombardment was horrific. But within myself, in my dreams, like human beings are magical creatures, Chris. And as horrible as situations may be, human beings, they usually find a way. And afterwards, it would seem like a madness. But with the levels of endorphins, the human being is... I thought of myself as a cockroach in Syria. At one point, I was laying in the grass and I saw a lovely fly, a big bulbous fly on a grass blade, and it just flew away from that place. The bullets were flying in that village. And I thought, how free is that fly? It can just get away from here. But of course, it would probably go right into some spider's web, wouldn't it? So.
Yes.
But, humans are hardy, and I thought to myself as a cockroach. I was in one village. ISIS was taking the village, and I was in a house, and I knew I could survive, and I crawled on my belly through burning grass. And the things that happened on that day, I carried a man on my back under fire, and I survived. And in the heat of the moment, human beings find a way to get through it. Because people, in the heat of the moment, they can be as mad as Ronnie and Reggie Cray. They can be as mad as Frankie and Mad Axman Mitchell. Like the woman who could suddenly pick up a car to save her infant.
He escaped from Dartmoor prison, that axe wielding maniac. Timmo, answer me a question. What kind of drugs and how much alcohol are you getting on the front line there in Ukraine? What's everyone doing to kind of drown their sorrows or get off it?
Well, it's Ukraine, and one will always come across a hidden stash of empty vodka bottles. Whenever one is around troops, one will go in a shed and one will find a stash of empty vodka bottles or a bucket. You know what a bucket bong looks like? A 5 litre.
I've never ever seen such a thing, mate. Don't know what you're talking about.
Well, of course, the soldiers are smoking some weed, and my platoon commander even said, "You can smoke weed, just don't in the position. Don't do it in the position."
Yeah.
In the wartime, people are given some leeway when they're on the second line, but of course, on the first line, at the zero line, there should be military discipline. But I know there are some teams, if everyone on the team has smoked weed, then one of the first things they'll do when they have a second is cut open a 5 litre water bottle and cut open a small water bottle. And then you have a suction bong to smoke weed with. And they'll make one of those. And in Syria, the thing was tramadol. The medics were dishing out tramadol to everybody. In some places, it was half empty packets of tramadol were laying everywhere. And cigarettes, the Kurds were given 200 decks of cigarettes with a packet of naan bread. Sometimes the logistics truck would come and there was only cigarettes and naan bread. But troops, they do need stimulants, relaxants. I don't drink alcohol. That's one of the truths of Islam, I think, is that I don't like alcohol. I don't want it in my life.
Good move.
But the German army in World War II, for example, they were given a lot of Pervitin. It's tablets made of methamphetamine. It can keep troops going for days. But I think in the future, you'll see a lot more drugs on the front line, Chris, because, for example, in 20 years, if there is a conscription in Britain and there's been legalization of cannabis, the hordes of modern young British people, they'll be crying out and going AWOL if you tell them you can't smoke weed now you're in the army. You'll have to let the young conscripts smoke weed. I'm not sure what the situation is in the Dutch army, for example, but in Bosnia, we had Dutch soldiers with us, and I never saw them, but it was said they were allowed to smoke weed when they weren't on patrol sometimes.
In the Dutch army, the soldiers just smoking the doobie weed. He's also your boyfriend.
Did you serve with the Cloggies? The Dutch Marines, they have a big partnership with the Royal Marines.
Yeah, they do. Where do you think they get all the ganja from?
Brilliant.
Yes, wow. So, just showing this headline here. Look, it's Trump to let Putin keep land seized from Ukraine. This seems under these, they're calling it peace talks, but basically Trump wants to let BlackRock have carte blanche to sort of do what it wants with Ukraine's minerals and natural wealth in return for like fostering or overseeing this peace deal in which Ukraine gives back, Crimea stays as part of Russia, which it kind of is anyway at the moment, I guess. it's saying here the Kherson region. I'm not sure about the Donbass, whether it's talking about letting Russia keep that, but I'm guessing it would be. It's that it's going to upset a few people, mate, isn't it?
Without a total collapse, as was the case with Germany in World War II, it's always going to upset some people, probably. So, yes, but I believe that the joy of peace and the spontaneous parties and the firing in the air of automatic weapons, I think a joy would overtake people there if it happened. But Chris, when you talk about Kherson, for example, Ruski Federatia, the Russian Federation, they only have part of Kherson now. What I'd like to make clear is that Ukrainians shouldn't be forced to give any extra territory. Like they shouldn't be forced to give Kherson City or any of the places where I served, which were north of the Dnipro River, east of Kherson. It should just be a total freezing of the front line. Nobody should have to give anything or leave it as it is. Leave it as it is. And if some civilians or some disgruntled military personnel have a problem, I'm sure there'll be the appropriate security operations to stop them from having any coup d'etat, or hopefully things won't go too pear-shaped and the state won't collapse. And still, Ukraine would be larger than Germany. It would be the largest country in Europe. So, just as with Finland in 1939, they fought honorably against the Soviet Union, which comprises Russia. But in the end, they concluded a peace treaty which gave Russia everything they'd wanted in the beginning. And everybody remembers the Finns as the heroes of the hour. And I believe even if there was a peace treaty that some Ukrainians aren't pleased with, in the world's eyes, they'll always be viewed as the heroes of the hour, militarily. The small underdog who took on the largest country on the planet. But I do believe with Donald Trump that people need to see it if one soldier gets shot in the head today, it's too much, because we are becoming a more humanist society. Perhaps people should give up their just being swayed by fervent ideas and just think about that one kid on a bench who gets pierced by shrapnel from a rocket and dies that day, or that one father who's been in the trenches for so long and he gets hit by an aerial bomb and there's nothing left of that poor chap. And it's too much. As religious people, as Christians or Muslims or Jews or Sikhs or whatever, we have to remember that save one life, you save a whole world. So I fervently believe that Mr. Putin should just call Zelensky and say, fuck it, Vladimir, fuck it, let's just have a bloody peace deal, and forget all this bloody talk. Let's just have a fucking peace deal, get on with it, and save some face for both of us.
Yes, the trouble is that the most obvious solution doesn't funnel money to his big mafia club controllers. That's why we've seen this conflict. You think we'd have learned something after Vietnam, the public, I mean, but obviously no one reads books and learns their history. They're going to they keep these conflicts going as long as they can because the gullible British taxpayer, American taxpayer, they think it's all about like heroes and all this kind of nonsense, and
it all goes back a very long way, Chris. Can I tell you a story? It's written in the Yazidi scriptures. Now, their prophet is an angel. Most religions' prophet's a person, a human, but they claim that their prophet's called the peacock angel. And other religions, they claim that the peacock angel is the devil. But they also agree he was an angel. And so to the Yazidis, he tells his story. And he tells that he had a city on this planet before he fell out of God's graces. He had a city, and it's documented that it was in Jordan, the kingdom of Jordan. It was in the desert, 65 kilometers south of Ma'an city, M-A''An, Ma'an city. There's a road that goes to the Saudi Arabian border. 65 kilometers south, you'll see 3 aerials with red lights on top of them. A valley. The road dips into the valley. That's it. That's where the city was, according to the Yazidi scriptures. Now, it's close to military training now. Now, I learned of it through a book I read by an American military serviceman. It's called Psychic Warrior. His name is Major David Morehouse. He claims to have been a psychic remote viewer for the US Army. And it all started when he was hit in the helmet by a bullet at Baton el Ghul. And he passed out and he had a vision. He was at the foot of a grassy hill and 7 figures dressed in white met him. And they said to him, the path you're on now, your military path, isn't a very good one. And from those moments on, he had these psychic remote viewing powers. Well, there's many stories in the Arab culture about the place. And I've been there. Well, I set about going there. I visited quite a few times. And I can attest that it's one of those places like Lourdes in France or Jerusalem. There's many pilgrimage sites around the world where people attest, or Machu Picchu. So many people see UFOs at Machu Picchu. I don't disbelieve them. But this place, Baton el Ghul, in Arabic it means the belly of the beast, the belly of the devil. I had dreams there. I was fasting. I was sleeping on the desert floor. I dreamt of alien technology buried in the ground. I dreamt of huge eagles. They were eating meat in water, like kosher or halal meat. They said to me, we love you. I saw beautiful things there. And I'd just like to tell people, if I get a chance, about Baton el Ghul. Now, they say once the devil was sent down, he was sent to the center of the earth, according to the Yazidis, Chris. And there he still lives as an electrical consciousness. Do you understand the theory of an electrical consciousness?
In what respect, Timmo?
So our brain is a piece of meat, right? And with electrical signals going around it, which are our thoughts, correct? Which is us. So the center of the earth is a huge, swollen mass of molten metal. And it's proven that it creates electricity. Because all the electricity that goes out from the center of the earth to the ionosphere. That's what Tesla believed he could harness. But imagine that electricity in the core is a soul. If the thoughts in our brain can be our soul, and it's proven that it's just electrical signals in a piece of meat. So why can a fallen angel not live in the center of the earth? Electrical signals going around a ball of molten metal. It's proven that those electrical signals go out through the earth, through all the animals, to the ionosphere. And the Yazidis believe that their prophet, the peacock angel, he can speak to every human being on earth because his thoughts are layered into the electrical impulses of the earth itself. And Baton el Ghul in Jordan was his city. And if one can go there and find belief in that story, then one can believe in God and heaven as well. Because if one can see the reality of the devil and his sad fall, then one has the key to life, the key to believing in God himself and heaven. Because the devil, he fell to hell, but we still have a chance. He's trying to tempt us to go to hell, but we have a chance to go to heaven. We have a chance that our eternal life will be blessed in the Garden of Eden, whereas his eternal life is cursed. But according to the Yazidis, he'll be forgiven, Chris. That's another thing. The Yazidis differ. The religions differ. The Yazidis claim the devil, he'll be forgiven because God is forgiveness after all. Islam denies the passion. You recognize the passion of Christ. The story of how he went to the cross and his passion for God, it led him to self-suicide, as it were, on the cross, Chris. But Islam denies that. Islam says Jesus Christ was whisked away safely and God transformed the visage of a criminal and a criminal was crucified. Islam denies the passion. So things differ. But Christianity doesn't say anything about washing one's feet or being clean. You can have some minging Christian guy with like cheesy foreskin, cheesy toes. He ain't never washed. He ain't washed before prayer. A Muslim washes before prayer, goes out in clean white clothes. But that cheesy Christian, like university student, he'd never cut a virgin's head off. But that ISIS did. And that's the false prophecy part of Islam, Chris. Islam says that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I'll say that, Muhammad, he met the devil. The devil said to him, the devil has to tell one truth for every 9 lies to a prophet. You know, Muhammad, he met the devil walking in the desert. And the devil answered his questions. He says, when I meet a prophet, I have to answer so-and-so questions. And he said, one truth I have to tell you is that when a man gets angry, I ring a bell. He was covered in bells. The devil had a suit and hat with bells. And he says, when there's two men and one gets angry, I ring a bell. When he swears, I ring another bell. He says, when he bashes the guy with his fist, I ring another bell. Now, all that violent action, the lower part of humanity, the devil's trying to tap into it. But it's way more complex than we can imagine. Way more complex. And the monotheistic religions and the other earth religions give a wonderful window. And Baton El Ghul, Chris. Mm. One thing I'd like to do in this life is that people would go there after I passed away. Because it's hidden now. In the Quran, it says, in the end, the world will give up what's hidden within it. One day, the world will destruct, one day. And there's things buried in this earth of alien manufacture. And high technology will be revealed in the end, brother.
Yeah, I've never really gone much down the alien route. I know I'm not even going to, do a line in the sand or state my claim or whatever, because it's not really anything I know about. I think there's enough fascinating stuff just in life before you start looking at supernatural. But sorry, Tim, that sounded like I was trying to shut you up. I didn't mean that. I just meant that what I wanted to ask, where's your future lay then? Because I don't picture you picking up arms again. Not with your spiritual calling.
I have my red line in the sand, but I don't think I'll live long enough to see my hometown in England attacked by an infantry assault. I mean, if I was alive in a couple of 100 years, then I'd happily pick up arms, of course, to defend my own home, as people did in Bosnia. In Bosnia, one village would suddenly be cabbying off at the next village. There is one country you don't want me to talk about, but I would fight for that country if the call came. I
It's
would.
not that I don't want you to talk about it. It's just that, you
Well,
know,
there you go. I would.
it's just going to upset a lot of people, and I just didn't want to get, I would say political isn't the right word, but you know, I'm fascinated about why does someone pick up arms and go to a foreign country, and you know, there's just so much to talk about there.
Because it's easier in this day and age, Chris. It's easier in this day and age, but you're better asking that question to a civilian like Cossack Gundy. I served with him, Aiden, in Syria. It was his first war. He'd had uncles who'd been in the British Army, and he wanted to do his bit for his family, and he came to Syria to join Tabora Soran. You're better asking someone like him that question. But of course, with me as an ex-soldier, a lot of it is just professional instinct to carry on one's career. Like you and I, we went through basic training and phase 2 training. You did the commando course probably when you were a teenager. I did all that when I was a teenager for my regiment. And of course, at that time, we are forming as people. As they say, once a rifleman, always a rifleman. If a person's gone through British Army military training when he's 18, he'll jolly well be called by his inner psyche to go to the ends of the earth to soldier. Like when I came back from Syria, I crashed at my brother's flat in London, and I had a dream. It was about ISIS, and a voice in the dream, a calm and clear voice, it said, I would go to the ends of the earth to fight against them. Maybe it was my inner rifleman. But you're asking me, an ex-rifleman, Chris. The answer's clear. You better asking that question to a civilian turned freedom fighter.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I was probably getting my terminology all mucked up then. Timmo, listen, could chat longer, brother, but I think we've actually been chatting nearly 3 hours now altogether.
I've got to say, brother, right? Let's not get any problem between our friendship about the Mossad comment you made. But, well, what can I say? They're people who are doing what their hearts tell them to defend their own country as they understand, just like MI6 are doing, just like the CIA are doing, just like the KGB in its modern form are doing. If you're saying that the Mossad is sort of the head of the hydrant of international intelligence agencies, well, if there were such a thing, then the people from the chosen people who were involved in it would have a special place, because the chosen people have a special place for God and for the devil. So if there are people working for the devil, they would try their very best to involve Judaism in it in some way, to make God angry. They say Satanists go in churches, turn the crosses upside down, commit fornication in churches just to make God angry. They try to gain positions in churches just to make God angry, to take the piss. So if there were some people from the chosen people involved in it, they're just people trying to take the piss. And they shouldn't be thought of as Jews. They're Satanists. Just like if you've got some child molesting children's home using it as a fucking whorehouse. John Wedger talks about it. You've got it in Britain, mate. You've got it in Belgium. You've got it in all the countries. You had it in Tsarist Russia. It's called Satanism, Chris. And if you try and single out the Jewish people, it's wrong. If you try to single out the Mossad against the MI6 or the CIA or the KGB, they've all got their snouts in the trough. It's wrong that like Hitler singles out the Jewish people. No. If there's a few piss takers trying to hide within the Jewish people and blame the Jewish people, they're wrong uns, and they've got the Jewish people blamed. They've got them blamed, but that's for another podcast. God bless you, Chris. You're my friend, my fellow human, and I love you.
I love you too, mate. Gotta keep your powder dry, as they say.
Even in times of peace.
Nice one, Timmo. Friends at home, give us a like and subscribe. You're not going to get many chats on the internet like this one, and that's because we're unique. Massive thank you to my guest, Timmo.
Chinese trainers.
Yeah.
Respect.
Timmo, let's chat again, yeah?
God bless, Chris.
Much love to everyone. Cheers.
Peace.
Cause I've been living life